Thanks for tuning in again, everybody. We're back with your favorite podcast, Lucas, Tigers, and Bronze. Oh my.
Sure.
Well, Luca Nation, we have a very special Market Movers episode today. And, Cage, right before this episode, he asked, how did you and Nick meet? Nick Cepero, right? Did I pronounce that right, Nick?
You did, yes.
And I always look for anomalies. And what I saw when I went to Nick's profile is this buttoned up, good-looking chap with a shirt and tie. But then he also has two Jordan logo mans in his photos. And it's an anomaly. You don't always see these buttoned up players in the sports card hobby. So I was curious. I was like, who is Nick? So truthfully, I'm really excited for this conversation because I love your collection. I love the cards you have. And then I did a little research and I saw you are part of Heritage Auctions. And a part of that?
I was. Yeah.
And I want to hear more about, it seems like you have been in this hobby for quite some time. You are a collector. You understand the buying and selling game. You've been around for a minute. If you could give us, the 2-3 minute kind of preview, who is Nick? How did he get into the hobby? And then we'll start to navigate it from there. But I know Cage is really excited to have you on. I'm really excited to have you on and meet you today.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, a little just a little gist about me. I've been in the hobby for about 20 years, just collecting as a kid, going to Walmart, going to Target, ripping open packs, trying to just, get as much as you can. As a kid, you're just, you're going to the card aisle trying to find a treasure in there. I went to Emory University, and after I graduated, I was fortunate enough to land a job at Heritage. And at the time, they were the world's largest sports auction house. And I was there for 5 years, getting to see some of the world's best collectibles, the stories it's stories that belong on a TV show. Pretty much you come across 86 Fleer boxes on the floor of a house. You're digging through a basement, and you're coming across, thousands of dollars that in some cases, these families don't even know that they have. You're just providing so much, to this. And now what I do for work is I pretty much work for myself. So I advise, I broker, and I buy and sell sports collections. So I ventured out on my own, which has been extremely rewarding. I'm pretty much doing the same thing, sourcing collections and trying to broker deals. But it's a little bit different in the sense that you don't have all the resources that the auction house provides, because the auction house has been, like Heritage has been around for a very long time. So they have a huge, you're always sourcing calls at Heritage. So it's a little bit different, but it's still, extremely fun.
Heritage is constantly calling me saying, do you still own this card you bought from us last year or 2 years ago? We want to put it in the auction, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's their database. They have, which is interesting. So, I mean, before we go on a little more, tell me a little more about that. Because Andrew, I mean, I'm sure I'm stealing your follow-up question. It's so, you decided to go out on your own and source deals. You put buyers and sellers of cards together. I mean, talk a little bit about that. And then, after you explain it, tell people who might be listening to this, who might have a collection. They might have something sitting in their basement. They might have an uncle who just found the next Black Swamp find, and
Sure.
how to get in touch with you,
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so pretty much what I do is, I'm always upfront and honest. I love giving people information in terms of what the stuff is, what the stuff is worth. That's the biggest key, is having, instead of having a media area where an auction house is just trying to sell your material and pretty much tell you, hey, it's worth, it's worth $50,000, and they probably know it's probably not going to sell for that. They just want to sell the item. Like I'm just a third party that in most cases, my advice is 100% free. If you want my opinion, I get plenty of guys that, contact me and they're like, hey, what do you think this is worth? And I'll give them my honest answer. If they don't agree, they don't agree, but that's, at least it'll give them a basis to what it's worth. And, once I do find stuff, there's plenty of guys out there that they don't really want to go searching for the material. So they don't want to, be trolling on eBay or, going through the auction sites. They just want the material. They just want to know, hey, if you find this card, let's say it's an impossible card, if you ever come across it, you know who to contact once I get a hold of that. So I have, kind of my guys that I know, hey, if it's this deal, I could go to this guy and, facilitate it that way instead of, the mediary channels of the auction house. So it's, and in a way, it saves a lot of people money because, the auction houses do charge quite a premium for, for their services as well.
It's interesting. It's almost like middlemaning, right? So, I mean, a successful real estate brokerage, you've built up a book of clients there. I'm not saying you took the clients from Heritage. I'm not trying to get you in trouble. But, obviously you have a skill set that you took away from there. People know about it. And, it's, if I were to tell you, hey, Nick, I need you to find me a Charizard 1999 first edition PSA 10 Wizards of the Coast. You might have the ability to find one that might not pop up on eBay while I'm waiting for it. And I don't have to look every night on eBay for one to pop up for me to find. It's an interesting thing. And, why we have you on Market Movers, this is, Andrew's brilliant idea. Again, got to give this guy credit is, what I love about this hobby, and I've seen interviews of you, in 2017 talking about vintage cards and the market and the whole deal, is that this recent explosion in the hobby has created all these little niche industries, these little jobs, these group submissions like we're doing ourselves, or you who's branching off and you are creating a full-time job now as, I'm going to middleman hobby deals between big-time buyers and big-time sellers and put people together that otherwise would not have a way to do it. It's just interesting to hear about that. And I'm thankful that we were able to have you on here because it just tells the people listening to this who might have gotten in the last month or 2 months that, look, this is not going anywhere. This is a hobby that's building up, basically, an economy of scale here, right? Where, people are actually going out and creating businesses based on what's going on in the hobby. So thank you for that. I mean,
Nick, and I'm curious because I want to piggyback off of that. It's a two-part question. I hope it's okay to ask you this. What did you think about the resealing of the first edition Pokemon box? And really the second question is, if you were the broker that put a deal together, how would you play that? How would you handle that?
So, I watched that.
Little hot seat. I like it.
Yeah. So I did watch it. And to be honest with you, like, I'm not, huge on Pokemon. I got into it maybe, a month ago where I avidly did research because I'm like, man, these cards are selling for a lot.
Because you have to, right? You have to.
You kind of have to adapt and see. And I did watch it. And one thing I thought was, if you're brokering a $375,000 box, you should kind of know like what you're dealing with. You should know how to spot a resale. But also to that point, I think that box was offered to other people and the other people knew it was resealed. And I think that's a problem with the community. The community should be able to share, hey, I was just offered a resealed box. Be careful, just be more mindful of that. So, part of it's on the community, part of it is definitely on the seller. If you're brokering anything above, 6 figures, you should be the expert on the item that you have, or have somebody that, at least, is extremely resourceful to do that. I think the reaction was, at least I guess the deal was made right and everything, everything was fine. But, it's just something that's, sometimes it happens. People do get duped and it's even people, that are the experts, even in some cases, you could find people that, hey, I bought something and it ended up not being good and you're the so-called expert. So, that's not to say that, they don't know what they're doing, but it's also, you should at least do ample research and make sure that there's no outliers, especially with, the potential of a resealed box.
Tell us, so Cage, Cage buys and sells a lot and he's been in this hobby for a minute. Over the last few months, he met someone on eBay and he's done some huge deals with him off eBay and he's built relationships with this guy. Nick, do you have one or two stories that kind of come to mind about a really awesome deal that you made or a connection you made? I know a lot of buyers and sellers do want to stay in public, so let's respect that part. But I would love to hear like a story or two, about a really cool card a buyer came to you and asked for, or something. Does anything come to mind like that?
I mean, the past experiences, like, especially like, if I go back, like, let's say a year while I was still at Heritage, like one story that comes to mind was, occasionally you get calls of family members that pass away or, which is extremely unfortunate. And sometimes, these families don't really know what they have or what they're sitting on, or, even what their family member really collected. So when you show up to the person's house, you don't really know what to expect. You could see something and it not be worth anything. In this case, we flew out there and we come across this room.
So just to cut you, not to cut you off, like, because I really love the kind of intricacy of it. So someone literally picks up the phone and calls you. And were you at Heritage at this point?
Yeah, I was at Heritage at this
and they're
time.
like, we have a collection here at our house. A family member passed away. Can you come and evaluate it and see what we should do with it?
They have a list of questions initially. It's maybe send some pictures, and you don't know if it's real or not, especially T206s and those kind of things, right? They ask some preliminary stuff, but you're still taking a risk, right?
You get a good idea kind of asking preliminary questions. In some cases, some people, they can't really even answer. If they don't really understand it, they can't even answer what it is, because, they're going to give you the same, type of names depending on what the collection is.
Well, there's this guy Jordan in here, and I think he was pretty good, but I don't know. It has this case. I can't take it out of the case. I've been trying to break it out of the case. I can't tell you what's inside here.
Yeah, so you do get those situations, and we just so happened to be we were actually doing a road trip, and we just so happened to be we had free time, and it worked out perfectly to where we showed up at this lady's house, and we go into this room, like a normal bedroom, and all of a sudden all this stuff is laid out on the floor, and we go through the first box, and we're pulling out Tom Brady game worn jerseys, we're pulling out 386 Fleer boxes, we're pulling out like 5 Jordan PSA 10s, 86 Fleer PSA 10s. It was just, you're talking a 7-figure deal right in front of you, and you're just astonished, because like those calls don't happen every day, regardless of what, all the major auction houses, like that happens, every couple of weeks, for the bigger guys, but that's something that you're just like, you'll remember forever, because like you'll never experience that. Especially a lot of the items were just like one of a kind items, like a Tom Brady game worn jersey, like is, from a game worn perspective, is extremely hard to attain. So the person that collected this, they knew exactly what they were doing, and they just so happened, they had Super Bowl rings, they had you name it, they had it. So those are the situations that you kind of advise the person, hey, you made the right call, we're going to take care of you, but at the same rate, you also tell them, just make sure you don't let anybody in your house, because you're sitting on a fortune. Like you should install cameras for the time being until we're able to pull all this stuff out, because a lot of this stuff in some cases is not insured, and so you want to make sure that the person's taken care of at the end of the day, and they also don't get duped. You could go to a dealer, and the dealer's just trying to get the best deal in the room. They're not trying to they're not trying to advise you on hey, this is $1 million, let me help you move it for that. They're not, they don't care. They think, if I could get this for $100,000 and I know I can move it for 10x, they're going to do that.
And 100,000 to just a regular person who just stumbled upon these cards is like, what?
Yeah.
But they don't know the true value. I definitely agree. I have a question, but I'm going to save it to the end, because it's about one of my idols and heroes.
Well, listen, then I'm going to just do a public service announcement. If you happen to be listening to this and you're like, 75 years old, and you have a collection of, a stack of Michael Jordan PSA 10 sitting in your nightstand, some game worn, Tom Brady jerseys, some Super Bowl rings. What are some other priceless things in Andrew's mind? A Tyler Hero Prism base card. These amazing, like one-of-one items that you have. Do me a favor, take 5 minutes after you listen to this episode, write a little list out, put a little legal pad in, whatever it is. That way, your loved ones know, okay, this is worth $3 million. Don't do the disservice to me when I pass away and sell my Tom Brady, worn jersey, game worn jersey to anybody. So
Cage still has a house phone, if you didn't notice.
Wow, that he must get a lot of calls during the day.
I do. I have 11 warranties on my car.
Nick, on your
warranties,
one of your Instagram posts, you have 2 one-of-one Michael Jordan logo mans.
It's just one, but that's the before and after picture. So it's the top picture is when it was raw, and the bottom picture was when it was graded. That's actually one of a great story. So I got a call that somebody had the 1/1 Jordan Logo Man from 02-03 Upper Deck, and it's part of a set called Logo Mania, and it was the first set that they ever put Logo Mans into. It's a 9-card set, and they did 3 Jay Williams, so don't ask me why Jay Williams is in there, 3 Kobe Bryants, and 3 Michael Jordans.
Dude, Jay Williams was supposed to be very
he was supposed to be great.
He was
supposed to be the big guy.
Yeah. But, that didn't really pan out. So I get the call, and I get a picture of the item, and I'm like, wow, this is, historically significant in the sense that this is arguably the first Jordan Logo Man ever produced. Most people, like even me, I was looking at it and I'm like, man, I thought, Exquisite was pretty much the first to really, really generate the following with Logo Mans. And this was, this happened the year before. So we came across that card, and, at first I knew it was probably going to bring about 6 figures. So we had the discussion. This was a couple years ago. So the market's substantially changed by now. The card could be, probably you're talking maybe, it depends on where the market goes. An 8 sold maybe 6 months ago of the same card for about what this one sold for. So about $250,000, and this one was a 9.5. So you're probably talking that this one's maybe $500,000 to $1 million. You never know, because it's a 1/1. So you never know what somebody's willing to pay and who's out there bidding. But
how did you guys decide to go to BGS instead of PSA on it?
So that was an interesting one, because I thought that if we could always go back to PSA. I looked at the card first. So I flew to Chicago where the card was, and looked at it in person. And I was astonished, because you don't see a card that especially a thick border card, you would think, oh, it's raw at this point. The condition is probably not going to grade out very well. So, and it was in pretty much a screw down at that point in time. The people actually, the story behind it is they went to, I think it was a Walmart in New Jersey, and they bought a couple packs, and they ended up getting it out of a box, a $2 pack, in New Jersey. So they ended up getting a 6-figure card, 17 years later, out of a $2 pack. The story was remarkable. And the family was, they put it in like a chocolate box, and then they put it in a safety deposit box, and they said, we rarely even look at it. We knew, it was valuable, but we just, at the point in time that we got it, we knew we had something, but we didn't really want to sell it. So they just put it in a safety deposit box, and then 17 years later, they went to sell it. So it was good that they sold it, way later, and they took very good care of it. I took it out of the screw down. The next day, I flew back to Dallas with the card, and we took it to BGS. I figured the card would probably 9. And I figured if it had really high subs via BGS and it would 9, the card would likely cross to a PSA 9. But since it gemmed, I was like, the likelihood of a PSA 10ing was very up in the air to me. Cause there was, you're always going to be meticulous, especially looking at a raw card. Like me, I'm always going to err on the side of caution. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, just a little touch on one corner. So maybe they 9 the corner or something like that. If they err more on the side of caution, then they gem it, then, we really don't have to worry. But also with a 1/1, condition is one thing, rarity is another thing. So
I was going to say.
So guys don't if they're really after the card, they don't really care what the grade level is at, once it comes down to, like, you see the PMG greens now selling, and now everybody's making a buzz of an authentic selling in auction. And it's like, yeah, that authentic's going to do remarkable things, and nobody cares what the grade level is. Nobody cares what the condition is. Nobody honestly even cares if it's altered at that point,
Right. As long as it's authentic, especially because there's so few of them and so many people after them. No, I was just trying to get you to drop some special nugget about how Heritage and BGS are both in Texas, and there was some special, backroom deal going on. But you're not going to do that because it's just not possible. So I'm going to say it.
Cage is on this conspiracy theory kick.
I always assumed that auction houses and whatnot always had a better way of getting things graded for this one's potentially a BGS 9, but we'll make it a 9.5. I'll never prove it.
Do you think same card graded BGS 9.5 or PSA 10? Nick, you're the expert here. Do you think it sells for the same amount?
At that point in time, probably in today's standard, maybe, there's guys that, would prefer it in a PSA holder. It's very hard to say just because it is a one of one. If you're talking that there's, 25 or 10, then it's a different story. I think it's the PSA is always going to get preferential treatment. I always look at it from a standard of like, what's rare in the sense, like if you have, let's say a card that's serial number to 100, like what would you prefer if you go on the grading scale? And my preference is always, okay, BGS 10 for me is always number one because it's going to be always the lowest population regardless of anything. Like go look at probably any card, and the pristine or black label rate of any card is going to be lower than the PSA 10 rate, probably by far. So that's what I look at, when I'm buying. Like BGS 10s generally have a lower pop. Then of course, after BGS 10s, you're going to go PSA 10s, of course, and then you're probably going to go with the BGS 9.5 after that point. So that's kind of where I differentiate things, but it also depends on the pop, and it also depends on what the card is. But for most iconic cards, like I tell people, like if a BGS 10 is selling for close to what a PSA 10 is, go look at the pop of the PSA. If the gem rate is, let's say, 10% on the PSA, and you have a 1% on the BGS with, let's say, there's only 2,000, let's say it's 2,000 total graded between both companies, each have 1,000 each. And, you're talking that the gem rate of one is 10% and the other one's 1% with the same with the same total amount graded. You should go with the BGS long term. It's just going to play out so much better in your perspective. Because you could ask
your rebuttal. Cage is he doesn't dance with BGS. He won't even go in the same room.
I don't dance with the devil in the pale moonlight. So I mean, honestly, I think it's really just on this card at PS. Before I answer the question about BGS and PSA, Nick, just drop where this picture is, what your Instagram account is, because we spent some time talking about the card. I want our listeners to be able to go and find it and find your account.
Sure. So my Instagram is ncepero17, NCEPERO 17. So I have stuff in there, that, from some of that stuff is personal stuff. Some of it is, back when I worked for Heritage, just seeing remarkable collections that I just snapshotted. So you'll see, even stuff back then, I'd post even stuff that was raw back then. And then, if you scroll and like 3 weeks later, you'll see that it was graded. So you can see like the transgression of a LeBron, RPA, pretty much getting graded, and what that process entails. So those experiences were something that, I'll cherish because I think with LeBron RPAs, they're just being, stashed. I mean, most guys that own one, it's going to be a very difficult card to attain. And it could be a card that, in maybe 20 years from now is impossible. You're talking potentially for modern cards. It's like the Wagner. You just, when you see it, you need to buy it because you may not get ever a chance to.
And LeBron is very in full of himself, so to speak. And he's probably has like 4 or 5 of them himself, if I were to guess.
That's what
he's probably got all of them. He's probably got all of them. So quickly on the BGS or PSA, on this particular card, if it were one that I wanted, I'm not a logo man guy. I mean, maybe I'll change maybe my taste, my palette will develop over time, and that'll be something that I am more interested in. But if it were a card I was interested in, I wouldn't care if it was BGS 9, 9.5, or PSA 10 because it is a 101. I never really understood that. I do like the slab for a 101, only because it gives you, a degree of certainty regarding authenticity. But yeah, I don't think it changes too much. But I will say, as far as anybody coming into the hobby now, and everything's subject to change, but I think a PSA 10 slab on most things, not 101s, not real rare cards, but PSA 10 on most things has provided a liquidity to the market and to the hobby that was not previously there. I think that, it allows for things like StockX to sprout up and become popular. It allows for trading markets to develop on cards, Rally Road. It's a quote PSA 10 set. It's nice and easy for them to put that up there. A PSA 10 card, a PSA 10 becomes like a stock of a player. And a BGS 9.5 or a 10 are always going to be trading at some various multiple of those cards. Not 100% sure what it is. I don't mind the subgrades on a card, but
most people would agree with you in the sense that PSA is looked at as the standard, and there's a variation to that standard. Like if you have a 9.5, likely the 9.5 is not going to be, worth as much as a PSA 10. But if you have a BGS 10, you could potentially sell it for, let's say, double or triple what a PSA is going for. So PSA is probably always going to look at the standard, but that's also, they're going to be looked at the standard because they're also getting the most amount of people to submit with them. A and B, they're also attaining the highest price levels as well. So
so I got two questions for you. You can answer them however you like, right? So one of them is, I think it'll be an easy one. During your time now as an independent broker, and or your time when you were at Heritage, what's the coolest single piece? Doesn't have to be a card, but the coolest single piece that you've actually held. It could be one of those, the Jordan we talked about, or the LeBron, or one of those things. That's question one. And question two is, you know what? I'll ask question two after you answer it. Go ahead. I'm gonna make you answer it. Go for it, because I see you thinking.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, cool things. Let's say, Jackie Robinson game worn jersey is probably
cool.
up there. Taking a picture with the Heisman Trophy is definitely up there. That one's.
Did you do the Heisman pose though?
I didn't, but one of my coworkers at the time did.
Opportunity, Nick. Missed opportunity to not do the Heisman pose with the Heisman. Yeah, man, that's cool stuff. So that's awesome. How about a card? Card.
Having a Wagner on your desk is always cool to just snap a picture of it. Because you just, you'll rarely get those opportunities. But for me,
I would take, that's a cool job. I've actually visited the Heritage Gallery in New York because I've been on a lot of Heritage auctions. I've been there, in preview of an auction coming up, and they let you look at a card. If the card's there, if it's in-house, they do auction previews. And I've held some of these cards that I'm never going to bid on a Wagner now. They obviously do a little bit of a check on who you are and what kind of stuff. They don't want you just, grabbing a Honus Wagner. I have bid on a Wagner at a professional auction though, but we're talking about 15, 16 years ago. And the card was significantly less than it is now. I wish I would have bought it. But I've held some really cool, 33 Gaudy Babe Ruths in high grades and, like cards like that. It's a pretty cool process. Like I think if I hit the lottery or Andrew makes this podcast turn into what he promised me it's going to be at one point in time, and I got so much money flowing in from it that I would love that. That's a cool thing, just to be able to kind of be surrounded, like you said, to have a Wagner on your desk. That's that's cool.
I don't want to disrespect art, but I think that's the most overrated card in the world.
Why?
I tend to disagree with you.
Nobody knows who this guy is.
That's what
and
makes
it's
it cool.
always and it's beat to the card is just always beat too.
I mean, name a card that has a book written on it.
Name
the Wagner does. So the Wagner's pretty much the only card that has a sole book written just for the purposes of that card. It pretty much, and the Wagner is just, for most true collectors, it's the Grail card. It's always been, even people outside the hobby for the most part, like you ask somebody, hey, what do you think's the most expensive card in the world? And most people could pretty much answer T206 Wagner without having any knowledge basis, or they could at least give you a description of what the card looks like. They know it's a little card, this big, So I think it's more about, the allure of it than, who the actual player was. Like Wagner was a great player, an immortal figure in baseball, but, for modern guys, I could see why it wouldn't be something like that.
What's its contemporary significance? And I'm playing devil's advocate because you can respect art without actually understanding the story behind it. But I am playing like, what is the contemporary significance? What, like Mickey Mantle, he's still talked about. He's compared to Mike Trout. So I understand. Or Mike Trout's compared to him.
Every card that gets sold for a record price is compared to the Honus Wagner. Not to mention the fact that
that's cool.
So that it's the measuring stick of all cards. It's the thing that transcends baseball and cards. It's what compares it to art. And I'll tell you the story behind it, Andrew. And for our listeners who might not know this, and it's never confirmed, right? It's never confirmed that this is the story, but there's a lore to some of these hobby cards. The 52 Mantle obviously is an iconic card. It's Topps. It's Topps coming back into the hobby. There was a 51 Topps, but 51 Topps is stupid. But it's iconic for a reason. The 33 Gaudy, the 51 Bowman, but that's his rookie. But the 52 Topps is an iconic card. The 33 Gaudy set, there's a card, I believe it's card 106, Napoleon Lajoie. I might be saying that wrong. He was already done playing at the time. But at the time that set came out, there was, I believe it's a 140 card set. But Gaudy at the time, a bubblegum card company, put those cards with the gum, and they only made 139 of the cards, and they did not put card number 106 in the set. And a few intrepid set collectors wrote to the company and said, hey, we've been trying to put this set together. I think it was probably a genius marketing idea because there's people trying to make the set and they can't. They just keep buying gum trying to find this card number 106, and they just didn't put it in. Most likely it's just a mistake. But so what the company did in response was they mailed out in the following year, those 33 Gaudis were actually printed along with the 34 Gaudis, which has some cool Lou Gehrig cards in it. They printed the Napoleon Lajoie, one of the best players, in the game of baseball ever, was card number 106, and they sent it out after the fact. And it was only sent out to people who wrote in for it. And a lot of them have condition issues because they were sent to people with a letter saying, here's your card with like a paper clip on it. It was put through regular mail in an envelope, and not to mention the card's only almost 100 years old. That's a cool story. The Wagner story, the reason why it's scarce, allegedly, is that he had an issue with tobacco products. And at least this is the lore of the thing. And you want to talk about contemporary stuff. Think about, the truth.com and smoking now and all the crap that you see on television and, the don't smoke, it's good for your health and blah, blah, blah. Allegedly, they printed this out for him and he was like, I don't want my picture on a tobacco product. So they printed up 50, 60, 100, 200, whatever there were as samples, and that's how many have survived. Allegedly,
there's even stories of him saying that he didn't want them using his image just based off they weren't paying him. They
weren't paying him enough.
Yeah. So it could be the first licensing deal where they're not paying him enough money, to be, to license his.
It leans towards the tobacco one because he's on a lot of other products during.
I know.
He's on national cards. He's on candy cards. And stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely the more informed opinion of.
It's a cool thing, though, Andrew. I mean, it's a cool story. It's one of those things. As a kid, I didn't know who the hell he was. He was one of the greatest players. I mean, he was a great second baseman, right, for Pittsburgh, I think. And he was, but right now, I think his house came up for sale recently, and his house sold for less money than the card would sell for. I mean, it's just crazy, right? So
and anytime there's a headline like the Trout selling, that it surpassed the Wagner. Like the headline is, it becomes the rarest collectible ever to sell.
So dude, there are more stories about that card than any other card. The Gretzky McNall one, the fact that Gretzky bought one at a record price and how it's a fake, how it was trimmed.
Well, it's trimmed,
how it was, cut out of a sheet possibly. And I mean, just crazy stuff. Charlie Sheen owns one. There was one on display at Planet Hollywood, I think. You gotta look this up, man. It's got such stories. It's like Banksy. With the who knows and all this craziness around it, right? So one was on display at the Planet Hollywood. It was a PSA 1, right? And it turned out that, I don't know if it was an employee of the place, I don't know what the story was, but they replaced the card with a reprint and put it up on the wall at Planet Hollywood. So a reprint was there. And then they had the FBI had to come in and find the right one and return it to Charlie. I mean, it's just a crazy, there's so many stories about that card. It just transcends who Wagner himself was.
You went exactly where I wanted to go with it. And Nick, what we try to do for our community is we're just focused on bringing them value. You know, we don't charge really for anything that we do. We just want to help people. You know, I always think I'm speaking to my younger self, and I want to help them avoid the mistakes I made and to, you know, build on top of success.
Well, you're leading into question two. I want to see if you have the same question I had. So go. Because I told him I had two questions. He only answered one, and I didn't get to two. I'll bet you have the same question.
Is it the fact that, you know, we're seeing a lot of people make money on modern, and how do you take, you know, your profits, what you're making in these base cards, and turn that into a real collection? And you know, you've been in it, you've seen amazing collections. I know it's kind of a vague answer. If we could start there and we'll hone in on some details, that'd be great. But like, what makes an amazing collection, and what have you seen from people who've made some money and then turned it into the real collection?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely does, you know, it takes money to build a remarkable collection and a next level collection, but that's not necessarily like, it's all about the opportunity as well. Like people right now, they're very invested in base cards because base cards are, you know, they easily traded and they're like a stock. But like for long term, you know, for long term, like if you're rolling that money and let's say you sell, you know, let's say you sell 2 Luca base and you roll it into a Luca red or something like that, you know, or something with a definitive serial number. I think those cards will hold over time rather than the base cards. You know, it just depends on kind of, you know, where the market goes. There'll be a lot less volatility if you're buying actually rare cards than, you know, the more mass produced cards, you know, and that's if worst case scenario happens that, let's say, you know, the hobby doesn't grow exponentially as it's growing right now. It's grown so much in just a short period of time that, you know, it's probably better to just buy rare. But you don't, you know, you could even look for cards that people aren't even looking for right now that you think maybe not 5 years from now, but 10 years down the line, people will actually care. You think, you know, even in the 90s, I mean, there's certain inserts in the 90s that for certain players weren't worth what they're worth today. And the certain guys that were buying them then, you know, now are sitting on a fortune just because, you know, either they looked at it and they were like, oh, this is a true rare piece, or they looked at it just to fill their collection. I always tell people, collect what you like, not what other people are telling you to buy. Essentially, you can make your own informed decision while still taking advice from other people. Like, it's great, you know, when you're advised from somebody that's been in the hobby a long time and understands market fluctuations, but you could also make your own inference and be like, oh, I agree with that statement, and then, you know, make your decision. Or you could be like, let me do a little bit more research on it and see what the market's telling me. The market will always tell you kind of, hey, what's a play and what's not a play based off, you know, past sales. For true rarity, sometimes you need to set the comp. Sometimes you need to be the one to pay a record to actually attain that card. So that's the tougher thing when you're spending upwards of, you know, 5-6 figures on a card, and you need to be the one to kind of set the precedent on the card. Maybe that's what you need to do to, you know, take your collection. Some of it's a gamble, honestly.
A couple things to unwrap from what you just said. The first I'm gonna take out is the last piece. It sounds like you've made that same statement almost pitch wise to one or two or three of your bigger buyers to say sometimes you have to be the one that sets the record on this on a rarity, because it sounds like something you would say to somebody who's like, come on, man, I'm not paying $80,000 for this Lou Alcindor PSA
he just said that to Logic.
You know?
He just said that to Logic on a call a few weeks ago.
But I mean, you know, I know the comp was 50, but you got to pay 80 because next time this comes up, it might not be for 3 more years, and then someone's going to pay 120, right?
Yeah, but that's the pitch. That's in some way the pitch of a salesman. If I'm working more as, like, I always view myself more so as an advisor. Even if I'm brokering a card, if somebody comes to me and the last sale of a card was 75K, and I think the card true market value is 50K, I'm not offering that card to anybody, just because for me the variance on that card, if I don't think it is too much. I mean, there's too much downside for somebody to lose if I'm advising them on what
the other part that you mentioned that I do want to unwrap, and we hear it all the time: buy what you love. You say buy what you like. You know, for people coming in the hobby new, that is an important thing to remember, right? Because look, what you like might be what becomes valuable down the road. But more importantly, if you buy what you like, you buy a person you like, you buy a kind of card you like, and you build up a collection that has at least part of things that you enjoy, things or a player you root for. if a downturn comes for a couple of months, or if that card, shaves 10 or 15 or 20% of its value, you're not going to be running around your house with your hair on fire saying, I got to get rid of this now or before the bottom falls out. It's still somebody you like. It's still somebody you believe in. It's a type of card or a play you believe in. And you know what? You'll have confidence that it's going to come back. It's part of buy what you love. So here's my follow-up question on that. This was question number 2 for me. And I love the, buy raw, roll it into something good. So you've had insight because you've worked. I mean, we all say we've been in the hobby for a long time, but going to Walmart, opening up packs, or going to a couple card shows with your kid doesn't really mean you're in the hobby. You've been in the hobby in a way where, the vast majority of people can't say they were. I mean, you got out of school, and great school, Emory, by the way. Got out of school, and you went right into it for a career. You were immersed in it. You were going to people's houses and looking at their stuff, and now you've taken that and you've become, middleman, broker, trying to put buyers and sellers together. I can ask you a question that I think will provide value to our folks, because I think you have kind of a finger on a pulse of trends. What kind of cards are you seeing people ask for? What are your buyers out there saying, what, I need you to look for this? Is it trending towards a certain sport, trending towards modern, trending toward vintage? Just tell us a couple of the things that you're hearing, because that's like insider info. You know what I mean? That's behind the scenes stuff. And that's what we like to throw out there for Luca Nation.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for the most part, it's trending a lot toward modern, and it's trending toward a lot of modern rarity. So like, again, like the pinnacle for most modern guys is going to be like an NT RPA, like right now for like the modern wave of guys. So, a lot of stuff is, reaching these 6-figure levels, and the cards are, either were bought really early, and some guys like to hoard that stuff. So it's very hard to pry those out of people's hands. So you're seeing a lot of guys like, oh, I want to get into the market. I want to get it on Mahomes RPA or something like that. But it's like, it's one of those things where it's very hard to get those cards, where they are, but you can't get a person to really agree on the price, or the price level is just too high, because they'll be like, oh, I want to buy Mahomes, but I want to buy it at this level. So, the prices have kind of gotten to the point that, for most guys, the modern stuff, is definitely trending way upward. But some guys, there's a lot of guys that do take ample risk, and the risk has definitely, paid out in the modern sense. It's just, most stable guys, they invest in vintage. Most other guys that are more, like riskier plays, they're going to invest in a guy that's a lot more risky, like that. Either he's played a year, you never know what's going to happen. Even an 8-time All-Star in some cases gets forgotten over the course of history. So is that really going to play out, 15, 20 years from now? You never know. So, there's guys that like riskier assets, even long-term, and there's guys that are just so strictly in it for the short term. So they want, hey, I know potentially I'm betting on Mahomes winning another MVP and another Super Bowl in 2 years. What does that make the card market if that happens? It's in a way it's asset gambling, but in a way you could view it as, it's just strategic plays on what you could predict. I mean, and your asset value never goes down to zero in this. So in a way, some of these plays are, I mean, in a way they're pretty safe, depending on what you're buying, of course.
You've got to jump in here. There's people upstairs sawing some stuff. So
that's fine, because I thought you were trying to jump in and figure out. So
well, actually I do now. Now they stopped. I want to talk about modern rarity, and specifically, given what you do, I think you're going to have really great take on this. Cards like the Luca White Sparkle versus the Luca Red, right? They're both scarce. Or the Luca Tiger Stripe versus the Luca Blue, both scarce. But for me as an outsider, they don't feel the same. They're not numbered. The Tiger Stripe and the White Sparkle isn't numbered. How do you view those, I guess, retail parallels? And this is for you, Cage. I'd love to hear what you think of those, but I'd love for you to start off with that, Nick.
I hate the White Sparkle. I'm going to throw that out there. I think his question is more of even a retail or a parallel that is rarer, as opposed to one that there might be more of, but it's numbered like a blue out of 199, as opposed to something that there's less of, like the Tiger Stripe. But so the White Sparkle I hate, because I've never been able to get a White Sparkle pack. Those come in those like White Sparkle pack. I just assume that all of the insiders in the hobby get together at the National and say, okay, we're gonna distribute the White Sparkle packs between you guys now, and then you're the only ones who are gonna get the Luca and White Sparkle. Okay, I'm never gonna get one. I just never can. one day I'll get all the packs of White Sparkle and I'll give them out to kids for free. But I hate that.
That's really what they
particular
should
one.
be, to be honest.
That one right there, I hate that White Sparkle. I hate those like, oh, it's the pack of the. I just feel like it's one of these like it's one of the things that I would change about the hobby if I could.
Well,
but that's not his
Fast
question.
Break is another one. Fast Break is another one that doesn't get the hobby respect, right? So like, if you are thinking of doing a flight to quality, yeah, Nick, jump in here, please.
Yeah, I think with stuff like the parallels that aren't numbered, you just have to view it as like a population game in a way, because you could kind of inference how many were produced just based off looking at the PSA populations and the BGS populations, and pretty much just make an informed decision. Okay, well, how many, let's say like peacocks, how many mosaic peacocks were out there? You're like looking at it and you're like, oh, there's nobody really knows the exact number, but you could probably inference that based off how many are graded and the value of the card today, most likely all of them have been graded or close to all of them have been graded. So you could kind of inference that there's less than 20 or less than 15. So I think like with those, it's just kind of looking at it like, does it appeal to the collector at this point in time? With the actual serial numbered stuff, I think it's more of like visual appeal, like a Luca Blue, like that's a team color. So people are going to be like, oh man, that's a beautiful car. It just looks beautiful. Like, I don't care that there's 199 of them. I don't care. I want to own it because it has a team color. So, those are the type of things like people are looking for the trend of like, what's appealing to them. Like now the huge thing is like the team color. People love and, buying the team colors, and the team colors generally bring a premium. And you look at it and you're like, I could tell why that's an appealing card to people, because, it reflects well with the guy's jersey or, what he's wearing or how he's posed. So, I also think imagery is a big thing when it comes to collectibles. Like they're all based off photography. So buy something that's appealing photography wise. Like you don't have to buy what other people are telling you just because, some people may like certified better than they like Prism. It's just a matter of what their preference is. And if the player truly is what they believe he is from an investment perspective, regardless of what they buy, stuff will trend up. And if you're buying rarity, that trends up exponentially. So like if you're buying a Prism Gold, yeah, that's a certain threshold that you have to spend. So you're spending on the upper echelon of spending, but that's not to say that you can't buy a certified gold for, 10% of that cost or even less and still make that money, in the same fashion.
I like it. How about sports? You see people trending more towards football. Is it still basketball game? Is it football now because football is what's in season?
Football is definitely a huge player right now. Basketball, for me, I'd say the past year, basketball is king. I mean, it was, if you ask 2 years ago, even today, I mean, most auction houses generally trend to, primarily baseball has accounted for, 75 to 80% of their business. Now you'll see that shift dramatically. There's a lot less basketball offerings. Like you'll see the catalog grow basketball offering wise, but the baseball section would be this thick on a heritage catalog, and basketball would account for like that much of it. Now you're seeing more, a lot more offerings from a basketball sense, and you're also seeing those numbers of what these basketball cards are bringing, in some cases, dwarfing everything, baseball. So it's, and the Asian market has a lot to do with that as well. Like, basketball to me is more, provides more of that Asian market than the baseball market does. I think there's a lot more investability going on in Asian markets, trending toward basketball than there is in baseball. But, I think there's in all sports, it's, I buy golf cards, honestly. I'll buy, there's stuff that I'll buy that, I think, if you're buying iconic and you're buying, and you're buying for, pop culture,
Yeah.
I think there's plays in every sport. You just don't have to, you could diversify sport wise, just like you could diversify.
Are Arnold Palmer cards a play?
In a way, yes. I mean, because there's like, let's say you're buying like a 2001 like SP Authentic Auto. Like, I just think like that's, to me, like if I'm a golf collector, I'm going to gravitate toward that. He's no longer living. He was an iconic figure. I'll buy rare Tiger Woods cards because I think like Tiger Woods is an immortal figure that, you know, even a guy that doesn't even follow golf will tell you, oh, I want that golf cart just because it's Tiger Woods. You know, he's made that much of an impact on you know, pop culture. It's about, in a way, some of the best investments are about transcending sport or transcending more into pop culture. That's what like Pokemon has done. Pokemon has, you know, transcended more into pop culture than anything, and that's why there's a huge spike in people buying Pokemon.
What about modern soccer?
I like soccer. Soccer is a global sport. Europeans don't really collect, but that's not to say they can't collect, because, you know, they've collected stickers. Panini still wouldn't be producing stickers every single year if people weren't buying it. So they're still selling the stickers. So once they start getting more exposed to actually, you know, the trading card aspect and actually inputting like rare products in, you know, rare inserts and stuff like that into the products and getting exposed, hey, this common sticker is, you're probably better off buying a rare parallel than a common sticker, then you'll likely see shifts. And you're seeing a lot more collectors pop up in certain areas of Europe just solely based off soccer, they're only like soccer guys that will only collect soccer.
I'm not sold on soccer yet until the trends for collecting change on soccer. I mean, soccer is a global sport. I've heard that so many times, and I have some soccer cards. But I think what it's going to take is this is going to sound so terrible, but it's going to take an American phenom.
That's
like
you know, I do agree with that. I do think that the whole, you know, American side of things, like Americans need to get excited about soccer, honestly, because, you know, but that'll also come, like if the World Cup teams half of what they're saying it's going to be, you know, that'll also bring the allure back, you know. And you're seeing, the good thing is in soccer, you're seeing a lot more Americans on these Premier League teams, on you know, you tune in, you know, for a Champions League game and you see, you know, Christian Pulisic playing or somebody, you know, that's American playing, and you're actually, you know, you actually probably want to invest, you know. And it's for me, soccer's a lot like baseball in the sense that it's a lot of prospecting. So people love prospecting because prospecting, you could find cheap plays. You could find cheap plays, or you used to be able to find cheap plays in baseball, when like back in the day when you were buying like Bowman Chrome, you could prospect and, you know, spend $50 on a card, and that card could, you know, 3-4 years down the line could be worth, you know, $500, $1,000, and you're like, oh man, that was a great play at $50. Soccer, to me, I look at it in the same fashion. If you are watching and you think, hey, that guy has potential, you know, maybe not, it may not be tomorrow, but, you know, it's a 17-year-old kid, and maybe, you know, 5 years down the line, he's, you know, the next global phenom, you know.
I have 187 Mason Greenwood cards at PSA presently. He just got left off the England team again. You know, he's got to start following some rules, but I do.
This is really good, by the way. So this is really good stuff. Luca Nation, if you're listening, I would go and rewind, because it's actually to the point, and that's the rain behind me. So is it a little loud right now?
No, it's okay.
No, it just sounds like you're in the bathroom. It's fine.
Is that better?
Mm-hmm.
I've said this to Cage quite a bit, and you've made a really good point, and I just want to hone in on it. What worried me with investing in soccer, for example, with Mbappe, everyone got on the Mbappe train, but I've told Cage, I said, Mbappe's come and go. There's a lot of players in soccer. There's 4 really good leagues, maybe 5. There's 20, 25 people on a roster. It's not like NBA where Mbappe is the next Luka, even though I did make that comparison, because they're just such a bigger pool. But what you did was you made a really great comp to baseball prospects. So it's no longer necessarily about finding Mbappe when he's now already in culture. It's about finding Mbappe 4 or 5 years later. It's about finding the Haaland when he's $1 a card, $2 a card. It's about finding the Diego Jota, for example, crushing it right now for Liverpool, when he just gets transferred there, and playing it like a prospect as opposed to like finding the Luka and holding that forever. That's a really great point. And I hope Luca Nation goes and implements that strategy for themselves.
And you could, I mean, for basketball, it's a lot harder to do that in today's market, just because the product is selling for so high. So, you know, your base cost of buying even the lower tier guys could be as high as $5 or $10 for some of these lower tier guys. It used to not be like that. Like, you know, I bought a collection of Prism base from 18. It was 2017 and 2018 Prism base, and I was paying 25 cents a card for a group lot of all rookies, and I got a box of 5,000. And now you go back into that and you're pulling shays that you bought for you have maybe 50 cents into each of them. You're pulling those out, getting them graded and selling them for 250, if they 10 or so. And even at the height, they were higher than that. So like you could.
So you were getting Donovan Mitchell and Jason Tatum for like $2 a card.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. So Tatum,
the card that got graded and it was selling for $700.
In 18, if you were doing an 18, dude, he's not lying. I went to a show in 19 before Zion, before the 19 Prism came out. I was buying retail boxes of Prism for $100, and that was like high at the time. Nobody cared. People had stacks of like DeAndre Ayton, $3 a card, a stack of 20 of them. Like $1 cards. I mean, seriously. And that was it had already caught on. People already were looking for Luka, and people. That was when people were grading Luka. I mean, Luka, you could get Luka base cards for $10, $15.
Tatum's a funny story for me because I love Tatum in 17, and so I bought a ton, and I was buying his rookie season for, at the point of release, they were like selling for between $6 and $8 a card. So I bought, and then I got them graded, and I was going to sell them, and he just had a huge decline. The market declined, and they were selling 9.5s and 10s. A 9.5 was selling for about $26 or something like that. And I was like, man, I'm probably going to lose money after my grading fees and what I have into these cards. I'm going to lose money. So I just threw them in a box. And this was maybe, this was right his rookie year. And I threw them in a box and I forgot about them. I was going to sell them. And I was like, let me just put them in a box and forget about them. I go in my closet. I was moving recently from Dallas. I moved down here to Miami. And I was moving and I come across a box and I open the box and sure enough, there's like 24 Jason Tatum, 9.5.
You covered your moving fee.
Yeah. It was, and you move those things and you're like, man, I had, I was going to take a, $3 or $4 loss on these. And now I'm paying, I'm sitting pretty, but that's also having, it's also, you don't need to be spending a ton of money on this stuff to really make a huge profit margin. Like you could be buying like lower tier cards, like hoops cards. And even then there's guys that specifically will buy hordes of this stuff and they'll buy it cheap because people aren't really looking at it, but their profit margin, if they're spending $1 a card, getting it graded at 10 or $12 a card, let's say, or even on the high side, 14, their investment is, let's say $15 a card. And if they get a PSA 10, they move that for $75. Look at how much money there is there. And if you're rolling that 100, 1,000 times, there's money to be made there. You just have to find the game to where it makes sense for you. Some of those plays don't make sense. Some of them do. So it's about just, just make the informed decision, follow the market, know what your downside is to grading, know what your upside is to grading. Know when to buy raw, when to buy graded. Those are the inferences that collectors, I think the new wave of collectors are just solely focused on, let me just buy a PSA 10. Let me just buy a PSA 10. And you don't really need to invest that much money to really do that if you're calculating the gem rate. Sometimes it just makes sense to buy a PSA 10 because it eliminates the hassle, it eliminates everything, and you still have the investment. But some other times it's just like, if the gem rate's 70%, the odds are that most cards on the market are probably 10. If you're actually looking at the card when you're buying it on eBay and the guy has high quality scans, or if you're buying a lot of 10 and you're like, oh, well, there's bound to be something. Do some research prior. And I think that's the key, I think, for most collectors is like, I think there's some collectors that they want to they rather pay for advice and actually, really, buckle down and do the research themselves. And I feel like the people that are doing the research themselves are really, the ones that, really understand, okay, well, here's where the market's going to trend, or here's where it makes sense to do this.
Let me synthesize that real quick, and then I want to hear from you, Cage. What Nick is saying for you guys out there listening is, let's say you hone in on a card, right? You're like, Tyler Hero is my player, and I'm going to either buy Hoops or Prism. And now you have to decide, do I buy the PSA 10, the PSA 9, or Raw? He's saying before you make that decision, go to the PSA Pop Report, go to the BGS Pop Report, and take a look at, oh, look, there's been 1,000 cards graded and 750 of them are 10s. Well, why would I pay a premium for a PSA 10 when, sorry about that, guys, I apologize. Why would I pay premium for a PSA 10 where I could buy this raw and I have a 75% chance, probably higher if I have a good eye, to gem it? So buy it raw and gem. Whereas if I find that card and only 35% has been gemming, I'm like, oh, the PSA 10 now is a premium. I should go and buy that. I just want to synthesize that for people who, you know, when I was first in the hobby, I didn't know that stuff. And that's where the nuance, that's where the education really comes in.
I like it. Research it. So here's my question for you, and then maybe we'll be mindful of next time, and let you get back to the construction site that you're on, Andrew. But basically,
we've had 3 hurricanes back to back to back, and it's kind of it's left a little bit of damage on the property, so they're fixing it up.
It's good that they're doing that. I mean, let's hope you're able to go a week or two without a hurricane. It's crazy what happened down there. It's really insane. So here's my question for you, Nick, and then obviously, I want to remind people where they could find you again. But my biggest question for you is this. We have a lot of people who are new to the hobby, grading for the first time, using us to help them grade. And, we hope to get everybody a whole bunch of 10s. We have people who are listening to this who, might have just gotten into the hobby in the peak the last couple of months and have seen, some cards, a little vintage, a little modern, take a little bit of a pullback, especially with basketball. Guys who were flying high in the bubble who were eliminated, and you see some of the value come out. Guys like Mbappe in soccer who were $3,000 and are now $700 for that PSA 10. I think that you can, and I could be wrong here, but I think you can have almost a calming influence on these guys because you have insight to money flow. People, not only when you're at Heritage, but with what you're doing now, putting buyers and sellers together. We've heard a million people, from social influencers to my 7-year-old son, say we're early on in this thing, right? This is I've heard the phrase, we might not be in the first quarter of it, but we're in the second. We haven't reached halftime of this hobby. It's still growing. Where there's still so much legs to it. It's not a bubble that's about to burst. You don't have to escape and get out. Do you think that's accurate, especially given what you see with people coming into the hobby, big money people who are looking for that Zion 101 logo man, and they're willing to pay $500,000 for it or whatever it is, right? You see long-term health?
I see long-term health, especially from on the rarity perspective. There's a lot of new guys coming in and spending easily 6 figures in less than a month, and spending it. And they're looking at it from, hey, even in the short term, I can make money, or even in the long term, I could make money. I think there's no arguing that like the iconic of the iconic cards 20, 30 years from now will still be valuable because there's a nostalgic factor to this hobby. Like most guys that are in their 30s or 40s, now that they have the money to spend on it, they will spend the money. And it's I think that part is extremely stable. I think the base card market is just about is just kind of the one that you see the volatility on, and you just have to be mindful of what you're buying. If there's if at that point in time there's a low population of a card and it's selling very well, but on the back end of it, there after these cards start selling for $200 or $300 a piece, on the back end of it, if 5,000 are going to be graded, the population is just gonna go up astronomically, therefore driving down the price of the card. That's why you see Mbappe's go down. That's why you see, to me, like 92 Shaqs, that's why you see them, because back then they weren't worth grading. Now they are worth grading, where it makes sense, even if you get an 8 or a 9, that it's worth grading. I tell people, anytime you get a card worth about $100 and it has the potential to 9 or 10, it's probably worth getting graded, for the sheer fact you don't have to deal with the headache, you don't have to deal with the nonsense. And grading provides a standardization, and the standardization is great for the longevity of the hobby. It's great for for it trading like a stock. And people are looking for ways to invest that are fun. Everybody that talks about coming into the market is talking about, man, I'm reliving my childhood. This is this is fun to me. And I think that's the key. It's about the enjoyment. And look, people enjoy making money, and people are definitely making a lot of money currently. But you know, it's also about the collecting as well. People have an affinity to these cards. People are attached to them.
You made a great point on the 92 Shaq. You made a really good point. And that was one of my misses because I urged people to take a look at Shaq. You know, Shaq is easily a top 5 player of all time.
Absolutely.
But I feel if you look at his tops card relative to like a LeBron tops, it's so cheap. Like it's not just cheap. It feels so cheap. And at 350, I was saying, you know, this might not be 350 for very long. And it shot up. Both the gold and the base shot up to 800. And then you saw it retract as there's more and more and more supply. You see on eBay, people sell like 30 card raw lots of Shaq. So you're spot on. That's a really good point on the Shaq market. What do you want to touch on that? What do you think of the Shaq market long term?
I think it's an icon. He's an iconic player, and no doubt. Like I think, like to me, I always look at what's iconic and what's gonna, withstand the test of time, and who's gonna be like. Even if you ask maybe a 5-year-old or 6-year-old that likes basketball, hey, who's Shaquille O'Neal? They know, even though they didn't watch him play. And I think that's a big telling sign of, for future generations, if this continues, if this trend continues, and you get the younger generations involved, that the market on those players will, are extremely relatively stabilized after, waves of huge, after the wave of, everything that becomes graded, which in those eras of mass production, you're going to be waiting years for that stuff to kind of all get fizzled out and graded. But I just think like long term, if you're talking 15, 20 years from now, he's a figure that, the cards will probably hold because guys, my age or guys that, looked at him as an icon, or even him on TNT, he's a personality that's on TV every day. I think that is something that's different, that sets him apart from, let's say, like a great player, but like not in the limelight, like Tim Duncan or somebody like that, where it's like, yeah, he was a great all-time talent, and I'll remember his talent. But my 6-year-old cousin or nephew won't know who that is really, or will know of him if he really gets ingrained in basketball. But we'll have to watch videos to really understand the impact that he had on the sport.
The other thing to mention with that, and it's great, I love Shaq too, is what you talked about with the base card hunting and being mindful of the pop reports. And it's something we kind of try to preach here with: do your due diligence, do your research. The info is out there for you, right? So we talk about the PSA pop reports, and you talked about how, a card like Mbappe was selling for what it was, but then you knew there was going to be this flux of grading of it. And you talk about even the top Shaq card, people didn't grade it, so you knew it was selling for X, but people are going to grade it and more of those are going to hit. So the fade on that, or the way to play that, is find the rookie card that even when people grade it, it's not going to impact that population as much. So find that Shaq 92 upper deck full black card that, instead of the tops that's white border that's going to grade well, that black one, even in the last year, I think the population report has gone up like 2%. Because it's a hard one to grade in a high grade. Same thing with like Derek Jeter, right? His Topps rookie card base is probably going to have an influx of pop because it's a whiteboard or whatever. But the SP 93, which is all foil, these are like the little nuanced things that you should look at with these guys. If you have an idea, don't just say I'm gonna put my money into Jeter or Shaq. Put your money into one that you think might not explode in high end on the grading side.
Even on some of the base cards, especially in the 90s or early 2000s, look at how these cards are acquired. Like, look at how you could attain them without getting them graded and still be in good condition. Like factory sets are, you can find factory sets. Look at how to attain cards if you're looking to play the grading game as smart as you can. And factory sets is a way to play the grading game as much as in a way. If you play the factory game right, you could probably hit 5 times your money in some cases, just because if you're looking at it, if there's 4 cards in the factory set to grade and one of them 10s and that 10 is worth $200, well, there you go. And if the rest of them 9, that's just more money in your pocket. So look at those plays and just think outside the box more so than just buying the individual card that you're looking for. You don't have to buy the individual card that you're looking for. You could buy either the wax product that it comes in and even hold the wax product. The wax product, at some point in time, the wax product becomes scarce because people will bust it open. So just, be mindful of that as well, because the wax is probably the most stable asset that you could probably find for a product.
Nick, two things. Can you tell people once again where they can find you? And
Sure.
two, what makes you so special? And I think this is really exciting for our community is also let people know when and how and why they should reach out to you.
Okay. Yeah. So my Instagram is Cepero. So CEPERO 17. And, I think one of the reasons, I'm more than helpful when it comes to, if anybody asks me for advice, I'll give them my advice. I don't shy away. If somebody sends me a card and, is like, hey, is this a good buy? I'll say, I'll at least reply yes or no. I'll at least give you an answer. And, if you don't like my answer, that's what my answer is. So be it. It's the same with a value. I only will speak on experience. So I'll tell you, based off my personal experience, I think this card is worth X. If you disagree and you think it's worth 5 times what it is, so be it. And more power to you, because if you're able to get that price, I was wrong. And I know I'm wrong in certain occasions, and I'm more than happy to admit that I'm wrong. So I think one of the things that, sets me apart is, that I'm honest. Like, there's a lot of guys that, it's one thing to give advice, and it's other things to give advice for your own personal gain, and there's people that are giving that advice. Oh, well, I sold this card for 75,000. Well, did it really sell for 75,000? And it's reading in between those type of lines rather than, just giving a factual answer, because you could always, there's a lot of, especially when it comes to rarity, there's a lot of he said, she said games, when it comes to deals moving privately. So, you just kind of have to, read in between those lines, and I'm happy to provide honest answers.
Love it. Andrew, you got anything else?
I do. And I'll wrap up with this. Nick, it was so good to connect with you, man. I appreciate you doing this. And if you listen to this, guys, I would go back and re-listen, because there's a lot of little nuggets. We've covered things very high level. But at the same time, if you have any questions, like Nick said, he dropped his handle. We'll post his handle. Reach out to him. He's available. Having an advisor has been not even maybe, it's been the best decision I've had. It's a confidant, someone I could go to bounce ideas off of, ask, is this a good buy? Because honestly, what's made me the most money in this hobby isn't the buys I've made. It's the bad buys I've avoided. It's been the bad buys. And those have come for an advisor where they've said, hey, have you seen this or looked at this? Or my experience tells me that's not a good buy. And I highly recommend. Nick sounds amazing. Thanks.
So a lot of sawing going on. Poor Andrew. He's he's doing his stuff, but we'll get this one up there for you. And thank you, Andrew. Nick, we appreciate it. People are going to reach out to you because our Luca Nation, they are they're inquisitive and they're feeling their way on this. So let me ask you. I'll put you on the hot seat a little bit here. If you were to kind of give our guys who are going to listen to this guidance, just right off the top of your head from what you know, and it can be as simple as stay away from this sport or steer towards this sport because I see money going into football, or I would do this or that. One little nugget if you got for me.
I'd say back to kind of a point I was making. Look at the wax. Look at the wax. Not the modern wax. Don't look at the modern wax just because in a way I just feel like with the modern trends of wax, like the prices have gotten so astronomical. As you kind of said before, like we were able to go to a show in like 2018 or 2019 and you could buy boxes, let's say retail Prism of 17 was, $90 a box or so, so you could buy products that were affordable, and most of that stuff, most people tell you that's a mid-tier product. It's not supposed to be an $800, $1,000 box, just the demand's there for them to charge that. So just be mindful of that. And even if you're seeing this, all this wax that is, all this new wax that's trending at, $2,000 a box. Well, if you think the wax boxes 4 years, before that are better than what's produced today, and the rookie class is better, why not sink money into that rather than sinking money into something that potentially only has a downside to it? So I think that would be my advice. Is just trying to find things that people aren't looking at. Nobody's really telling you to go, to really, they're telling you in some cases to bust product right now, which, in some cases isn't your best play, because you're better off buying the card than you are, ripping open a $5,000 case at this point.
Beautiful. All right, Nick, we appreciate it. Luca Nation, thank you very, very much. And Andrew, we're doing a question and answer tomorrow. We're going to put up a little question and answer thing for folks. All right, so pay attention to that. Ask questions. Nick, don't ask me any questions because I don't know if I'm going to know the answer. You're very smart. I might not have. You can ask questions. I'm just playing. You ask whatever you like. Nick, we're thankful to have you on. We appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you for spending some time with us on another episode of the Lucas, Tigers, and Bronze Oh My podcast. Do us a favor and like, subscribe. You know what? Don't just like and subscribe. Everybody does that. If you like us, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your enemies, tell everybody. And we hope you got something from spending some time with us today, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.